a very special guest to the program. The second time he's appeared on the show, former Reagan advisor, former Ronald Reagan economic advisor, he of the Laffer curve, Art Laffer. Art Laffer, welcome back. What is the number one question you believe? And it could be more than one, if more than one come to mind. But what is the one or so questions you believe each presidential candidate should be asked and expected to answer?
To me, economics is the key. I mean, all of these other issues and social issues and all that stuff, even international military issues, to me, really take a back seat to the economy. If you've got good, high-paying jobs, a lot of all the rest falls into place. And the one thing I'd ask them to do is, what would you do to taxes, spending, monetary policy, trade policy, and what we call incomes policy or regulatory policy. And I would match their answers with a low-rate flat tax, spending restraint, sound money, free trade, and minimal regulations. That's how I'd rank them, and I'd expect them to give very straightforward, simple answers on the others.
Any of these GOP presidential candidates, have any of them caught your attention in a positive way?
Yeah, I'm really very impressed with virtually all of them. I mean, I'm glad Donald Trump isn't running, not because he's not a good guy and didn't do a great job and everything. I think it's more of a distraction.
Yeah.
I'm glad Huckabee's not running because I think he's great on Fox, and I think he's much more of a social issues person than economics. There are a couple of others. One other I hope comes out of the race because of the importance they have on what they're doing otherwise. But all the rest of the candidates, I think, are really fit to be president. I look at Newt Gingrich. He's a hell of a guy. I mean, he's really good. I look at Tim Pawlenty. They don't get any better than that. Huntsman I know well, and he was phenomenal in Utah and also as ambassador to China. Michelle Bachmann is stellar. She's fantastic. If you look at Rick Perry, I mean, they don't get any better than that. They really don't. Herman Cain, phenomenal as well. So we've got a great group of people running for president in the United States, and frankly, my view is that let the best person win, and I think that race is on. But we've got to change the structure of how we deal with the economy. And it's not just Republicans, by the way. It's Republicans and Democrats that have messed this up. It's not right-wing, left-wing. It's not liberal. It's not conservative. It's just commonplace economics. I mean, if you look at the spending under Bush, it was outrageous. If you look at what happened under Obama, it's outrageous. It's a bipartisan ignorance that really shocks me. We need a complete reformulation of economics to get us going. I mean, what you really want to do is look at the best party and what they're proposing.
How would you rate Obama?
I don't think he's been very good. I think he's a phenomenal man, and he's a national treasure. I mean, really, he's an example of an American success story personally. And all the things that have happened, he's just a wonderful person, but he's wrong on every issue he's dealing with. And, as good a person as he is, he's just wrong on the issues. We've got to cut government spending. You can't increase it. You got to have a low-rate flat tax. You can't have Obamacare. It just doesn't make sense, frankly. You don't want the Dodd-Frank bill on regulating Wall Street. This is what you were telling me about Cotter.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't have card check. You can't be pro-union on everything. People have to have the right to join unions if they want to, or not to join them if they want to.
It's crazy.
They could be a force too.
I don't know. I can't even imagine how we're having this conversation in the country about forcing people to join unions
and not allowing companies to move from one state to another because they're considering a retribution against the union. I mean, the Boeing case in Washington State's outrageous.
Yeah.
But this is all the stuff. I mean, I think what Obama's doing on energy policy is silly. I think what he's doing the one thing I sort of liked about him was that he promised to get us out of Afghanistan and Iraq, and now we're in Libya as well as still being in Afghanistan and Iraq. It doesn't make sense to me, but I'm not going to go on that stuff. It's not my economics, but this man had the opportunity of doing a great job for America, and I think he's blown it.
Do you think, as we stand here today, do you think he will be reelected? Do you think he'll be defeated? Do you think we need to see a Republican candidate emerge from the pack before we can say he'll be defeated?
Well, I don't think we need to see his opposition. Every election, in my view, is a referendum on the incumbent.
Yeah.
And I think the reason Obama won by as large amount as he did was because of Bush being a fairly poor president. I mean, really, honestly, Bush wasn't very good.
And people were fatigued over the war.
Oh, yeah, we were fatigued over the war and all that. And I think the reason Reagan won is because Carter was so bad.
Right.
And I think that Obama has a steep uphill fight to be reelected. I think that any of these candidates that we now see out there, I think if they run a good campaign, they can beat him.
A year ago, you had some very harsh predictions for the economy for 2011, saying that we'll have a double-dip recession.
Yep.
Inflation will be, will reignite its ugly head. Has the economy performed about as you expected a year ago?
Well, let me be a fuzzy economist and qualify.
Sure.
I was making the double-dip recession argument based upon them not extending the tax cuts. And my argument was that if you know they're going to raise taxes next year, what do you do this year? You accelerate all the income into this year you can, and then it leads to a double dip. Thank God they did extend the tax cuts, and that never occurred, although we are having the slowest recovery in U.S. history since the Great Depression. So it's been a very, very poor economy, whether you look at employment or real output. I don't care what you look at. With regard to monetary policy, you see spot commodity prices going through the ceiling. You see the dollar falling in the foreign exchanges. You see a Fed policy by Bernanke that makes no sense to me at all. So, I don't think my analysis of the economy is much different than it was a year ago. But goodness knows I'm very pleased it did extend the tax cuts and we didn't get a double-dip recession.
They did extend them. Do you think the economy gets worse as we go into 2012?
Yeah, well, it depends on what they propose in 2013. But, in all honesty, I think the market will get a lot better if we see a big change in politics. If the pro-growth agenda people take over the Senate and keep control of the House and the presidency changes, we could have one of the most boisterous, strong economies that the world has ever known, starting maybe 2014, once they get the policies in place. So I'm very optimistic about the U.S. I'm amazed at the elections of 2010. I really was delighted.
Boy, talk about sending a message to the administration, huh?
Yeah, it sure did. But, the next message is 2012, and we'll see. My guess is the Republicans will take control of the Senate, and I think we'll take over the presidency with this pro-growth agenda Republican group. And do remember that after being in power for several years, the Republicans succumb to the temptations, and they become the problem as well.
That's right. Well, and I think the Tea Party movement is born out of that frustration and that reality.
I think that's true, and I think the Tea Party has had a major positive impact on the Republican Party and on America.
All right. Arthur Laffer, final question. I mean, it's kind of a softball question. It's kind of a given, but
I'll take softballs. I love them.
I got to ask, in this economic environment, if Ronald Reagan were president instead of Barack Obama, what would Reagan be doing right now with you as his advisor?
He'd be repealing Obamacare. He'd be getting rid of Dodd-Frank. And he'd be bringing government spending down by huge amounts. What we did on TARP and on all the stimulus funds was wrong. I wrote about it then, and I'll tell you about it now. Government spending doesn't create jobs. To see this clearly, just imagine we have a two-person world, two farmers, and that's the whole world, nothing outside it. If one of those farmers gets unemployment benefits, who do you think pays for them?
The other farmer.
The other farmer. Government spending is taxation, pure and simple.
Boy, I love that analogy.
And I've never heard of a poor person spending himself into prosperity. And that is what we'd be doing right now. We'd be restraining, we'd have a sound dollar, we'd have free trade, we'd have minimal regulations, and we'd have spending restraints and low-rate flat taxes. And that's the way we're going once this administration's over, once this spending spree is over. And we've gotten rid of the bad ones and the Republicans as well.